This is Mike on the mic.
What's up, George? How you doing, man?
I'm sneaking by.
That's good, man. It's good to hear from you. Thank you very much for taking the time today. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Yeah, we're going to talk about you coming to Webster, Massachusetts and Indian Ranch September 19th. The Good to Be Bad Tour, 45 years of rock. Did you ever think it would be 45 years? Did you plan on that?
I don't think anybody even plans on living that long, let alone playing music that long.
Right. What have you been doing during the pandemic? Have you been trying to make more music, or have you been pursuing other things?
Just minding my own business, Mike. I've been, that keeps me pretty busy. So, I just generally do what I always do when I'm off the road. I don't really have much of a social life or anything like that. I usually stick close to the home with my guitar and exercising, getting as much rest as I can. And for the most part, my nose was glued to the TV, keeping up on the crisis with the virus. That was, took up most of my attention because it's just a worldwide crisis going on, and so really that was my main interest, to see what the development was that on a daily basis.
Do you think there's any music that you're going to write about that is has to do with the crisis and the pandemic?
I hope not. Let me tell you something, Mike. When the pandemic, God willing, it plays itself out and it gets a thing of the past. Who wants to hear about it again? I mean, why would you want? Why would you? Write a song about the Holocaust or something. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. I mean, I'm just not that kind of person. Some people, they do those kind of things, and that's their thing, and that's cool. But that's just not my thing.
That I wholeheartedly agree. When I want to go out and see music, I want to forget about it for a little while. I just want to.
Bad news is always out there waiting for you.
Right. Right.
I don't like to bring it. I don't like to bring it to the bandstand.
I guess I wouldn't call it a homecoming, but you're near. We're about 45 minutes west of Boston, and you and the Destroyers were based in Boston for a little while. What brought that on? Why did you guys make this your base for a little while?
Just for the work, Mike. It was kind of a. There was from Connecticut up to Rhode Island and Massachusetts, and that area was a kind of a blues mecca in the early 70s and mid 70s. And we started out making a weak attempt to be a blues band, and there was a lot of blues activity there coming in from Chicago. Hound Dog Taylor, Muddy Waters played there, Howling Wolf. And there was local bands, Roomful of Blues. People like that, the Powerhouse Blues Band, and people like that. So naturally, we just gravitated to it, just so we could get some work. That was basically it.
And then your recent release is Live in Boston in 1982. You shout out some of those bands like Jay Giles Band and some clubs like the Inman Square Bar and some other places. You're great with the references on that, and that's a great recording. Do you remember that show at the Bradford Ballroom?
Well, we did 3 of them, I think, and I can't really single one out from another. I just I remember the enthusiasm and the attitude of the audience, which was really impressive, because I used to call that area the combat zone.
Right.
And if you went to the combat zone, I mean, that was not the place to be when the sun went down. It was not even a place to be when the sun was shining.
Right.
So I thought that was a real, almost like an honor to see that place, packed up, and say, man, these people risk the combat zone to see you, Thorogood. You better make them happy.
Yeah, there's not much of the I don't think there's any bit. There's maybe 1 or 2 places that I guess you could say, in quotes, keep the spirit of the combat zone alive. The Boston police force wasn't real enthusiastic about keeping the combat zone alive. Yes,
I tell you, because I talked to some of them, they were more than thrilling for the change.
What's great about your live show, and you can really hear it in the Live in Boston recording and any other live recording, or if you've ever seen George Thorogood and Destroyers, you guys work hard. You work real hard, and I was reading an interview saying it's not so much about the size of the crowd, but the connection you make with the people.
The connection's there. I mean, whether it's 100 people or 100,000 people. That's our job. As simple as that. People come to be entertained, and the more you give them, the more the more you give them, the more they want. So that's a kind of a motto of ours. If they're this excited, let's keep them excited.
What is I've seen some shows where you're out in the crowd, you're walking up and down the aisles with a guitar. What is the one thing that stands out you had to do to get a crowd going? Like, I remember when I lived in Richmond, Virginia, this guitar player, Linwood Taylor, he would come through Richmond, it seemed like monthly. And when he didn't think people were into it, he'd walk right over to the bar and get up on the bar and play there. Mm-hmm. So people, they had to pay attention to him. What's some of the things that you did to get the crowd going?
Pretty much the same thing with your partner you just spoke of. That's a standard routine. It started with Elmore James, and Albert Collins did it. Muddy Waters did it. I mean, Big Walter Horton. Everybody I saw, that was a standard thing. But the real thing that would get people's attention was the songs you were playing. If you were playing a groovy song, that picked up their attention. And I said, you could have all the great theatrics in the world, but if you don't have a great tune behind it, you're only halfway there.
You mentioned that kind of on the Live in Boston album. You're saying, and you've mentioned this a lot in different interviews too. I've heard that it's women lead the way. If women start dancing, then that gets the guys out there dancing because they want to get with the women, and women kind of recognize what's good. You mentioned like women loved Elvis, and that kind of propelled Elvis,
Mm-hmm.
And so, that's kind of a thing. If you can get to the ladies, then you can get the guys out there, and it becomes a real party, right?
And the song we connected with that got the women on the bandstand was One Bourbon, One Scotch, and One Beer. And I saw John Lee Hooker perform that in an era in time when nobody got up and danced to the blues. They sat there like it was a temple. And that's okay when Fred McDowell played, or B.B. King, or Muddy Waters. Well, when I went to see John Lee Hooker, everybody was dancing, and 90% of them were women, and the song he played was Bourbon, Scotch, and Beer. So I said, okay, well, that's the ticket right there. And you're right. The guys get a couple beers, and you see these ladies out there with the tight blue jeans and the high heel shoes and strutting their thing to Bourbon, Scotch, and Beer. They're going to stick around, So it's a very simple formula, Mike.
There's a legendary story that I keep reading and hearing about you. When you were playing, I think it was at the Cellar Door, and Jimmy Thackeray and the Nighthawks were playing across the street, and you guys. Now, what happened? You guys exchanged. You went and played with each other's bands during your sets. Was that the deal?
The deal is that the Nighthawks and Jimmy Thackeray thought because they were all jealous because all their wives and girlfriends were in our club watching me play. And that's what happened.
Okay.
Right. That was the bottom line of the whole thing, man. Thackeray came into our club, and everybody started throwing things at him. I said, this is a trick on me. We drew all the women. We were playing Bourbon, Scotch, and Beer. And that was the deal behind that.
Okay, that's again comes back to the ladies.
That's right.
It's all.
Absolutely.
That's awesome. Also, during your set, you're going to break out the hits, right? But you had that really awesome solo album a few years ago. Are you going to be doing any solo acoustic performances during the shows?
Mike, acoustic acts draw the critics. Rock bands draw the women.
Yeah. All right.
So, does that answer your question?
That totally answers my question, Mr. Thorogood. Yes, absolutely. Right. Well, listen, man, I appreciate you checking in with us. We're looking forward to seeing you over at Indian Ranch in Webster on September 19th for the Good to Be Bad tour. Thank you so much, man. I really appreciate you taking the time.
Thank you, Mike.